I was deep undercover, trying to complete a mission for my order. The target, the Crimson Covenant. My first test, the initiation, was to present myself as an offering to their mysterious, newly crowned matriarch. I decided to go all in. Dropping to one knee before her throne, I took her hand in mine, my voice a low, seductive whisper. Matriarch, I am but a humble man, but I would be your willing thrall. Let's explore the paths of pleasure together. Will you have me? The figure behind the beaded curtain went rigid. A second later, a hand, wearing the very moonstone charm I had given away years ago, parted the strands of shimmering crystal. Her smile could topple kingdoms, but her voice plunged my soul into an icy abyss. Well, 10 years ago, you gave me this charm and told me to leave the shadows, to embrace the light. You said the path of shadow was heartless, and you were my only salvation. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. And now, you want to drag me back into the darkness with you. Staring at the face I once swore to save, a cold sweat slicked my skin. The elders of my own order were hidden just outside, waiting for my signal to storm the place. Today, I was pretty sure I was about to be hunted by both sides. My mind went blank, a roaring static in my ears. Seraphina Knight. It was her, the girl from a decade ago, covered in mud, but with eyes that burned with the defiance of a cornered wolf. Now, she sat on the throne of a shadow order, draped in crimson silk, a teardrop of scarlet painted between her brows, as beautiful and deadly as a vengeful goddess. The acolytes around me, who had been watching me with amused contempt, now looked at me with the kind of pity you reserve for the dead. Matriarch, you know this man? One of the Covenant elders asked cautiously. Seraphina's fingertip, cool as marble, traced my lips. The touch felt like a venomous snake coiling against my skin. She let out a soft laugh and drew her hand back. No, I just think such a handsome face would be a waste not to cultivate in the arts of our covenant. Her voice was quiet, but echoed through the grand hall. From this day forward, he, Ethan, will be my personal attendant. My only one. Personal attendant. Only one. The words landed like thunderclaps. 100 glares, thick with jealousy, malice, and murderous intent, pinned me where I knelt. I was now public enemy number one. Seraphina looked down at me, her expression unreadable. Come to my chambers tonight. The hall erupted in a wave of shocked whispers, quickly followed by lewd, knowing laughter. Kid's got guts, I'll give him that. Straight to the top. The new matriarch sure isn't wasting any time, is she? The back of my shirt was soaked through with sweat, but I forced myself to remain calm, bowing my head. I lived to serve the matriarch. I followed her into the inner sanctum. The heavy doors boomed shut behind us, cutting off every prying eye. The air inside was thick with the scent of an exotic incense, one designed to stir the senses and cloud the mind. Seraphina shrugged off her elaborate outer robes, revealing the pale curve of her shoulders as she walked toward the massive bed. She sat on the edge, a mocking glint in her eyes, as she watched me stand frozen by the door. What are you waiting for? She purred. Come here. Undress me. My hand tightened around the combustion glyph hidden in my palm. It was my last resort, powerful enough to level the entire hall. I was running the odds, kill her first, or send the signal and let my order handle it. I took a step toward her, then another. Just as I was about to make my move, she struck. She was so fast, I didn't even have time to blink. A single finger jabbed into my abdomen, right over my core. A brutal, chilling power flooded my system, sealing away 80% of my essence in an instant. I grunted, my body locking up, completely paralyzed. She leaned in close, her warm breath ghosting over my ear. Her whisper was for me alone. Ethan, darling, your body seems so much stiffer than your words. The playful taunt was a death sentence. I was completely at her mercy. What she called serving her was, in reality, a night of exquisite humiliation. Seraphina didn't lay a hand on me. She didn't even let me near her bed. Instead, she pointed to a smaller cot in the corner, one carved entirely from frost jade. Her first command was simple. Warm it with your essence. With my core sealed, channeling my power was agony. I had to draw it out thread by painful thread, feeding it into the frozen cot. Icy energy flowed back up my arms, burning through my veins until sweat beaded on my forehead. And her? She just lounged on a nearby divan, lazily flipping through a book. By the time the cot was finally radiating a faint warmth, I was utterly exhausted. Without even glancing at me, she tossed the book she was reading. It landed in my lap. Read. I opened it. My breath hitched. The Precepts of Argent Light. An introduction. I wrote it. It was a copy of my own annotations. I looked up at her. She was watching me with keen interest, clearly anticipating my reaction. I took a deep, steadying breath, swallowed the bitter taste of shame, and began to read. Within all things, there is a fundamental light which gives form to chaos. Below, it is the mountain and river. Above, the sun and stars. With a heart centered in the light, no shadow can prevail. As I spoke that line, she let out a sharp, derisive laugh. Stop. I fell silent, my fists clenching at my sides. Read it differently, she said, propping her chin on her hand, her eyes glinting with a cruel amusement. Use the same tone you used when you begged me to take you in, with a little more desperation. She smiled. Beg me. My teeth ground together. For the mission. To survive. I squeezed my eyes shut and began again. My voice was raw, laced with a trembling, sycophantic quality I didn't recognize as my own. Listening to me recite the sacred tenets of my order in that debased tone, she laughed until she was breathless. I read all night. When I finally stumbled out of her chambers at dawn, my legs were trembling. But in front of all her handmaidens, Seraphina rewarded me with a pile of rare artifacts and potent reagents. She tilted my chin up with her fingers, her voice a lazy drawl. You performed beautifully last night. I'm very pleased. In an instant, I became the most talked-about man in the Crimson Covenant. People bowed and scraped wherever I went, offering fawning compliments. But behind the scenes, the number of people who wanted me dead grew exponentially. Seraphina seemed to revel in twisting the knife. Her next task for me was to stand guard while she bathed. I was forced to stand just outside a painted screen, listening to the sound of splashing water. Every drop felt like a whip lashing my pride. From the tub, she would call out deliberately, Ethan, is the water to your liking? I remained silent. Would you like to come in and see for yourself? Silence. My mind, however, was a screaming vortex of rage. She would just chuckle, the sound dripping with the smug satisfaction of revenge. I started to wonder if she knew who I was all along, if this was all just an elaborate game to torture me until I broke and revealed myself. Not everyone in the Covenant was thrilled with Seraphina's leadership, especially some of the old guard. Elder Marcus was the first to challenge her, and he used me as his excuse. In the council chamber, he pointed a trembling finger at my face, his voice ringing with accusation. Matriarch, this man's origins are a mystery. His essence doesn't feel of the shadow. In a matter of days, he has gained your absolute favor. I fear he is a spy. He raised his voice, and several other elders behind him echoed his sentiment. We demand the matriarch dispose of this boy to maintain the integrity of the Covenant. He is just a plaything. Kill him and be done with it. My gut clenched. This wasn't about me. It was a power play against Seraphina. Seated on her throne, Seraphina just tapped her fingers lightly on the armrest, her expression unreadable. She glanced at Elder Marcus, her tone deceptively mild. He is mine. Who dares touch him? The single sentence silenced the hall. Elder Marcus's face turned beet red, but he didn't dare say another word. But then, Seraphina changed tack. However, the elder's concerns are not without merit. She looked at me. My personal attendant cannot be useless. So, let us have him face Elder Marcus's own prize student, Cole, in the proving grounds. Let us all see the quality of my judgment. A rock dropped in my stomach. Cole. He was the rising star of the Covenant's younger generation, known for his viciousness. More importantly, I couldn't risk using any techniques from the Order of Argent Light. Trying to fight him with the clumsy shadow arts I'd picked up in the last few days was suicide. In the arena, I was completely on the defensive, a clumsy, pathetic sight. Cole's attacks were relentless and lethal, forcing me into one desperate dodge after another. The crowd of acolytes jeered and laughed. I thought he was supposed to be special. He's just a coward. What a waste of a pretty face. Cole lunged, a vicious strike aimed straight at my heart. I had nowhere to go. On pure instinct, a familiar surge of power rose within me. My body was already moving to execute a perfect argent parry. At that exact moment, Seraphina's cold voice cut through the noise from her seat above the arena. "You fool! Sidestep left 3 paces. Channel your power now." Her voice was sharp with irritation, but shocked me back to my senses. 3 paces left. That was the opening in Cole's attack. My mind raced. I wrenched my body out of the parry, sliding 3 awkward steps to the left while forcing what little shadow essence I could muster. Cole's attack hit nothing but air, leaving him wide open. I seized the fleeting opportunity, slamming my palm into his chest. He screamed, flying backward and spitting a spray of blood. I had won. It was a clumsy, ugly victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. The entire arena was dead silent. Seraphina stood up, announcing to the crowd that my performance was unacceptable and that I had embarrassed her. My punishment was to be personally tutored in her chambers. Back in her private suite, she told me to sit and meditate. Before I could say anything, her palm was pressed against my back. A wave of her potent, chilling essence crashed in my body, rampaging through my energy channels like an untamed beast. She was probing the very foundation of my power. Panic seized me. I desperately suppressed the luminous essence of my order, fighting to keep it from reacting to her invasive shadow magic. The slightest clash, and I'd be exposed, dead where I sat. Cold sweat drenched my back. After what felt like an eternity, her power suddenly receded. Seraphina pulled her hand away, her eyes holding a strange, complex expression as she looked at me. "Your foundation is interesting." She said nothing more, turning and leaving me alone, my heart hammering against my ribs. Did she know? Or not? The crisis of my identity had barely subsided when a much bigger problem arrived at our doorstep. Damien Thorne, the young master of the Sanguine Legion, the second most powerful Shadow Order, had come. Dozens of massive, obsidian airships blotted out the sun, a truly ostentatious display of power. Damien, dressed in robes even more flamboyant than Seraphina's, leaped down from the command ship, a conqueror's smile plastered on his face. "Seraphina, my love, I've come to marry you." He brought with him mountains of treasures as a bride price, loudly proclaiming his intentions to the entire Crimson Covenant. The mood within the fortress immediately shifted. An alliance with the Sanguine Legion would make the Covenant untouchable. Seraphina watched his performance from her throne, her face an emotionless mask. Damien's gaze swept the hall, and it didn't take long for it to land on me, standing in my place beside her throne. He frowned, his eyes filled with undisguised contempt. "Seraphina, darling, when did your standards fall so low?" he sneered. "You allow this thing to stand beside you." As he spoke, a crushing wave of spiritual pressure slammed into me. He wanted to force me to my knees in front of everyone. I gritted my teeth, fighting with everything I had, but my legs began to tremble uncontrollably. Just as I was about to buckle, Seraphina casually flicked her sleeve. A gentle wave of her own power met his, neutralizing it instantly. The pressure vanished. Seraphina's voice turned cold. "My people and my tastes are not for the young master of the Sanguine Legion to judge." Damien's face fell, his smile gone. At the banquet that night, Damien targeted me at every turn. He sauntered over, a goblet of wine in his hand and a fake smile on his lips. "I hear you the matriarch's attendant. What special talents could you possibly possess to earn such a position?" His cronies laughed. "He's a bed warmer, my lord. What other talents does he need?" I said nothing, my face a stone mask. Seraphina answered for me. "His greatest talent is keeping me happy." Damien's expression soured even further. He suddenly changed the subject. "This feast is dull. Why not a bit of martial entertainment?" His eyes burned into me. "Let's have this Ethan fellow show us what he's made of." It was a blatant attempt to get me in the arena so he could cripple or kill me. Every eye in the hall turned to me. I looked at Seraphina. She gave me a subtle look that said stay put. She took a slow, deliberate sip from her goblet. "My attendant's only duty is to attend to me," she said coolly. Brawling is such crude work. He is not familiar with it. With one sentence, she defined me as her exclusive property and shut down every angle of Damien's attack. Attending to her was my job. Fighting was not. Damien was left speechless, his handsome face flushing a deep, ugly purple. He glared at me, the murderous intent in his eyes so thick I could almost feel it. Standing behind Serafina's throne, for the first time, I felt a strange sense of being protected by her suffocating dominance, even if that protection came at the cost of all my dignity. Damien did not give up. He took up residence in the Covenant's guest quarters and made my life a living hell with petty harassments. More importantly, he began using the promise of an alliance to pressure the Covenant's elders. The Orders of Light are growing stronger. The Order of Argent Light watches us like a hawk. If we in the shadow do not unite, they will pick us off one by one, he'd argue. An alliance between the Sanguine Legion and the Crimson Covenant is a union of strength. It is the only logical path forward. The elders, already wary of their new, young matriarch, were swayed by Damien's promises. They began to pressure Serafina to accept his proposal. Her position was becoming more precarious by the day. Finally, at a grand summit of all the major shadow orders, Damien made his final move. In front of every major leader, he presented a legendary artifact, the heart of the Crimson Phoenix, as his final betrothal gift, publicly forcing her hand. Serafina, marry me, and I guarantee the Crimson Covenant will know an age of unparalleled prosperity. His words were both a promise and a threat. If she refused, her covenant would stand alone against the forces of light. The other leaders chimed in, adding to the pressure. The young master is right, Matriarch Knight. This is for the greater good. Indeed, the fate of our orders is more important than personal feelings. Serafina sat on her throne, her face growing colder and colder. I stood behind her, and I could feel an almost palpable aura of frost emanating from her. Suddenly, her eyes found mine. As the entire hall watched in silence, she slowly rose and walked toward me. The sharp click of her heeled boots on the marble floor echoed in the silence, each step landing like a hammer blow on my heart. What was she doing? A terrible feeling of dread washed over me. She stopped right in front of me. She was shorter than me, but as she tilted her head back to look up at me, her presence was overwhelming. She reached up, hooked her arm around my neck, and pulled me down. Her warm breath caressed my lips, carrying her unique, chilly fragrance. Ethan, her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the hall. 10 years ago, you failed to teach me what salvation was. Her lips brushed against mine. Tonight, I will teach you what it means to fall. And then she kissed me. Her lips were soft, cool, and trembling almost imperceptibly. My mind exploded. The entire hall was frozen in stunned silence. Damien's handsome face twisted into a mask of pure fury, like a demon from the deepest hell. The kiss ended. Serafina released me and turned to face the assembly. Her voice was as cold and sharp as a shard of ice, ringing through the hall. Ethan Stone is the consort I have chosen. I stood there, paralyzed, the ghost of her touch still tingling on my lips. I looked at her back, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes beyond revenge or cruelty. It was a wild, desperate gamble. And so began my life as Serafina's fate consort. The first order of business was moving my things into her chambers. Consorts naturally live together, she stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. A massive, ornate screen now divided her suite in two. Late at night, in the profound silence, I could clearly hear the slow, steady rhythm of her breathing from the other side. It was a more exquisite torture than anything she had ever devised. Damien's retaliation was swift and constant. He didn't dare openly attack the matriarch's chosen consort, so he resorted to sabotage and assassination attempts. Each one was quietly thwarted by Serafina's loyal guards. After one such attempt, she coldly tossed a vial of premium healing potion at me. "Don't die," she snapped. "You'll make me look bad." Her voice was as icy as ever, but I knew she had protected me again. To make our relationship believable, we were forced into public displays of affection. like inspecting the fortress together. In full view of everyone, she held out her hand to me. I hesitated for only a second before taking it. Her skin was cool like polished jade, but holding it made my own palm feel like it was on fire. I felt her fingers curl slightly against mine. We coincidentally ran into Damien on our walk. He stared at our joined hands, his eyes dark with malice. A common toy who clawed his way up with his looks dares to compete with me. He hissed, his voice a venomous whisper in my mind. A surge of anger rose in me, and for the first time, I didn't suppress it. I met his gaze, my own mental reply, just as sharp, better than a pathetic waste of space who grovels at her feet and can't even touch her hand. As I sent the thought, I squeezed Serafina's hand tighter. She glanced at me, and in her eyes, I saw a flicker of something I'd never seen before: surprise. A few days later, Damien laid his trap. He triggered the collapse of an abandoned, unstable rift gate, creating a spatial vortex. Serafina and I were caught completely off guard, pulled into a tear in reality. We were trapped in a small, dark, and utterly silent pocket dimension. I could smell her cool fragrance, feel the warmth of her breath just inches away. The air was thick with unspoken tension. In the darkness, her voice suddenly came, sounding distant. 10 years ago, those things you said to me, how much of it was true? My heart seized. How could I answer that? Tell her it was all a lie, a mission to earn a reward? Or admit that some small part of me had meant it? My silence stretched, amplified by the suffocating darkness. After a long time, she didn't press the issue. She just sighed, a soft, quiet sound. That sigh felt like a needle piercing my heart. To break Damien's hold and solidify Serafina's power, we needed a legendary reagent, the Ghost Fire Bloom. It was said to fortify the soul, making one immune to the Sanguine Legion's signature mind control arts. The bloom grew in only one place: Godfall Canyon, one of the most treacherous zones in the Shadowlands. The canyon was choked with malevolent energy and patrolled by powerful beasts. Serafina and I fought side by side, slaying monsters and breaking ancient wards. To my surprise, we worked together perfectly. I couldn't fully unleash the techniques of my order, but the precision and timing of my swordsmanship complemented her aggressive, overwhelming shadow magic. She was the hammer, I was the shield. Light and shadow, offense and defense. Together, we were far more powerful than the sum of our parts. Several times, I caught her looking at me with a new, speculative glint in her eyes, as if she were reassessing everything she thought she knew about me. We finally found it in the deepest part of the canyon, a single flower pulsing with an eerie, blue light. The moment we moved to harvest it, disaster struck. The guardian of the bloom, a nine-tailed shadow cat, an ancient beast of immense power, awoke from its slumber. It lunged, roaring with fury. It was far stronger than we had anticipated. Within moments, we were both bleeding and bruised. The beast seemed to realize Serafina was the greater threat. It gathered its energy and unleashed a devastating beam of pure destructive force, aimed directly at her. She was exhausted, caught between moves with no way to dodge. In that instant, my mind went blank. The mission, the order, light, shadow, none of it mattered. There was only one thought. She cannot die. My body moved before I could think. I unleashed all of my power, including the luminous essence I had kept desperately suppressed, and threw myself in front of her, a shield of golden light. Squelch! The shadow cat's claws ripped through my chest. Agony exploded behind my eyes, and my consciousness began to fade. As I collapsed in a pool of my own blood, I saw her face, usually so cold and distant, twisted in a mask of shock and terror. Seeing that expression on her made my heart ache. With the last of my strength, I grabbed her hand and shoved the ghost fire bloom I'd snatched at the last second into her palm. Go, leave me. But she didn't go. She cradled my head in her lap, her eyes turning a frightening shade of crimson. Ethan, she screamed, her voice trembling with a desperation I had never heard before. You dare die on me. The next second, she leaned down and crushed her lips to mine. A pure, warm, life-giving energy flowed from her into me. It was her life force, her very essence. I could feel her own power fading rapidly as my wounds began to heal at an impossible rate. My eyes widened. I tried to push her away, but I was too weak. All I could feel was her fierce, desperate resolve, and the hot tears that fell from her eyes onto my face. And I finally understood. What I felt for her wasn't guilt anymore. It was love. I was unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. When I woke, I was in Serafina's bed. She was slumped over the edge, still fully dressed, her usually flawless face pale with exhaustion. She had been watching over me the entire time. She was sleeping restlessly, her brow furrowed, muttering something under her breath. I leaned closer to listen. Ethan lied not die. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. It hurt to breathe. Footsteps approached. It was her trusted handmaiden, Chloe. She came in carrying a bowl of medicine, and her face lit up when she saw my eyes were open. Then her own eyes welled with tears. "Sir Ethan, you're finally awake." The matriarch. Chloe glanced at the sleeping Serafina and sighed, as if a dam of silence had finally broken. She began to tell me about the 10 years I had missed. "Sir, you probably don't know what happened to her after you left. It turned out the generous reward I had received from my order all those years ago had been used to buy a life-saving elixir for my mentor, Master Kane, who had been gravely ill. Immediately after, he had sent me into a secluded retreat to break through to the next level of my training, cutting me off from the outside world entirely. And Serafina, the young girl who thought she had found salvation, had taken the moonstone charm I'd given her and gone looking for me. She just wanted to ask if I had meant what I said. But she didn't find me. She found the swords and scorn of the Order's patrols. Shadow Spawn, how dare you trespass on our sacred ground? Get out. Don't taint this place with your filth." She was gravely wounded and barely escaped with her life. Meanwhile, her own covenant, learning she had consorted with a member of an Order of Light, branded her a traitor and put a bounty on her head. Cast out by the light, hunted by the shadow. She was utterly alone, pursued by the entire world. Chloe told me how they had hidden in sewers, eating moldy scraps of bread to survive. She told me how Serafina had almost died over and over again, and that the only thing that kept her going was a burning, bitter hatred for me. The moonstone charm she wore around her neck wasn't a cherished memento. It was a brand of shame, a constant, daily reminder to never again trust anyone, especially not the self-righteous hypocrites from the Orders of Light. Every word Chloe spoke was a knife, twisting my heart. I reached out and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from Serafina's sleeping face, a profound agony washing over me. A single, thoughtless act, my arrogant attempt to save her, had brought her nothing but ruin. I thought I was her light, but I was the one who had pushed her into the endless darkness. Looking at her then, I made a silent, sacred vow. "Serafina, from this day forward, I, Ethan Stone, will protect you. No matter what, even if it means turning against my order, even if it means turning against the entire world." I reached into my tunic and pulled out the small crystal I carried, the one meant to send the signal to my order. Listening to Serafina's soft, sleeping breaths, I closed my fist and crushed it into dust. Thanks to Serafina's tireless care, my wounds healed quickly. The atmosphere between us had changed. She no longer tortured me with words or deeds. She was still cold, but now, deep in her eyes, there was a complex emotion I could finally understand. But our peace was short-lived. Damien, like a fly drawn to blood, returned. This time, he didn't bother with ceremony. He stormed directly into the matriarch's private chambers. He dismissed the guards, leaving just the 3 of us. He wore the triumphant smirk of a cat that had finally cornered its mouse. He pulled something from his coat and tossed it on the floor. It was a white jade token, engraved with a single, stylized silver flame. The sigil of the Order of Argent Light. My sigil. My blood ran cold. The worst had happened. "Night, Brother Ethan. Fancy seeing you here," Damien sneered. He turned to Serafina, whose face had gone deathly pale. "Serafina, my dear, I'm going to give you a choice." His voice dripped with malicious glee. "Either you seal away your own power and come back to the Sanguine Legion with me willingly, and I will ensure that your little lover's secret remains between us." He paused, his smile turning cruel. "Or I broadcast this little trinket to every Shadow Order from here to the coast. I'll even send a copy back to the Order of Argent Light. Let everyone know that the great matriarch of the Crimson Covenant fell in love with a holy knight sent to kill her. Ha ha! Can you imagine? You'll be the laughingstock of the age. And your precious covenant? It will be torn to shreds by the furious armies of the shadow. Seraphina's body began to tremble, every trace of color draining from her face. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. It was a checkmate, a perfect, inescapable trap. I stepped in front of her, shielding her from Damien's vile presence. This is between you and me. It has nothing to do with her. Damien laughed contemptuously. Oh, it has everything to do with her now. I'll give you 3 days to think it over, matriarch. He turned and strode away, his laughter echoing like a devil's curse in the cavernous room. Seraphina looked at me, and in her eyes that had only ever held coldness or hate for me, I saw a torment and conflict that broke my heart. I saw a single tear trace a path down her cheek. 3 days, 3 swords hanging over our heads. We didn't speak a word to each other. We didn't have to. We both knew what the other was thinking. On the 3rd day, Damien confronted us in the great hall, in front of all the Covenant elders. Well, matriarch, have you made your decision? He asked, oozing arrogance. The elders, sensing a shift in power, began to murmur their support for him. Seraphina looked from Damien to me, her eyes full of despair. I saw her raise her hand, a grim finality settling over her. She was going to do it. She was going to destroy her own power. No, I wouldn't let her. Wait, I shouted, pushing my way to the center of the hall. Under the stunned gaze of the entire assembly, I met Damien's triumphant smirk. You don't have to wait any longer. I threw my head back and laughed, a loud, booming sound that made the rafters ring. He's right. I jabbed a thumb on my chest, my voice clear and strong. I am Ethan Stone, a knight of the Order of Argent Light. Chaos erupted. The Covenant elders and acolytes drew their weapons, surrounding me in a tight, glittering circle of steel. Seraphina stared at me, tears streaming down her face, as if she couldn't believe I would admit it myself. I didn't look at her. I pointed my finger directly at Damien, my gaze as sharp as a blade. But today I fight only for her. Damien, you wanted me dead? Here I am. I challenge you to a duel to the death. Only one of us is walking out of this hall alive. Just as Damien and I were about to clash, everything went wrong. The fortress's defensive wards shuddered violently, struck by a powerful force from the outside. Figures in the silver and white of the Order of Argent Light stormed the hall. At their head was my mentor, Master Kane, the Order's High Justicar. Ethan, return to your post. Slay these agents of shadow. His commanding voice boomed through the hall. It was over. Damien had planned it all. He had led my order here. He burst into maniacal laughter. Ha ha ha. Do you see, Seraphina? This is the man you love. He betrayed you, and now his masters have come to kill you. Everyone expected her to break, to fall into despair. But she didn't. As everyone watched, she flew to my side. We stood back to back, her own sword drawn, its tip pointed toward the 2 armies arrayed against us. The righteous and the wicked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried an earth-shaking resolve. He is mine. Touch him, and I will kill you all. In that moment, we stood against the world. The battle exploded. Knights of the Order, acolytes of the Covenant, and Damien's sanguine legionaries clashed in a chaotic melee. And at the center of it all stood Seraphina and I. We stood back to back, trusting each other completely. I no longer held back. The sacred, luminous techniques of my order bloomed in the heart of the Shadow Fortress for the first time. Seraphina's magic was a whirlwind of dark, lethal energy. Light and shadow, yin and yang. Our 2 styles, which should have been fundamentally opposed, merged into a perfect, deadly harmony. My steady, defensive forms shielded her from every attack. Her unpredictable, lightning-fast strikes tore open fatal wounds in our enemy's ranks. Together, our power was magnified tenfold. Damien, shocked and enraged, couldn't believe the woman he'd considered his prize would fight with such ferocity for a spy. He attacked us himself, only to be driven back again and again by our seamless coordination. Finally, my sword pierced his shoulder as Seraphina's palm slammed into his chest. He screamed, spraying blood, and flew backward. Retreat! Retreat! His legionaries grabbed their fallen leader and fled in a panicked, disorderly rout. With Damien's defeat, the fighting died down. The knights of my order surrounded us. My master, his face a mask of thunderous fury, strode toward me. "Traitor, come here at once." I looked at him, the man who had raised me like a son. I slowly sheathed my sword, turned to face him, and knelt. Thud, thud, thud. I bowed 3 times, my forehead striking the hard stone floor. "My debt to you and the Order is one I can never repay and will never forget. But our paths have diverged." I looked up, my gaze clear and resolute for the first time in my life. "As of this day, I, Ethan Stone, am no longer a knight of the Order of Argent Light." With those words, I drew the ornate sword from my belt, the one Master Kane had given me on my 18th birthday. With a cry, I braced it over my knee and, to the gasps of my former comrades, snapped it in two. The pieces clattered to the floor, severing my past, my loyalties, my entire life. Serafina stared at me, her expression one of utter shock. She had never expected me to be so absolute. Then, she reached up and unclasped the moonstone charm she had worn for 10 long years. She held it up to the light. 10 years ago, I thought this was my salvation. Her gaze hardened. Then for a long time, I thought it was my shame. She opened her hand, and the charm dropped to the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces. She walked to my side, and in front of everyone, she took my hand. "Now I understand." Her voice was soft but firm. "I don't need anyone to save me. I just need you." She pulled me to my feet, and we stood together, shoulder to shoulder. In that moment, all the misunderstandings, the hatred, and the pain between us evaporated into nothing. Faced with Serafina's iron will and the unprecedented unity of the Crimson Covenant's elders, the Order of Argent Light was forced to make a tactical retreat. A crisis that could have shattered the balance of power in the Shadowlands was over. After that day, no one in the Covenant dared to speak of the matriarch and her plaything. They had all seen that her plaything would defy the heavens for her, and that their matriarch would go to war with the world for him. That night, in the matriarch's chambers, the ornamental screen that had once separated us was gone. Serafina was curled up against me, her head resting on my chest, idly tracing the calluses on my fingers. The suite was quiet, the only sound our mingled breaths. She broke the silence. "Hey, my willing thrall." I looked down at her. She was smiling up at me, a playful, wicked glint in her eyes. "So, are you still interested in exploring the paths of pleasure with me?" I smiled. I leaned down and kissed her a long, slow kiss that spoke of everything we had been through. When I finally pulled away, I rested my forehead against hers, my voice hoarse. "Matriarch, I am but a humble man. But for the rest of my life, I am yours to command. Until my last breath." She laughed softly and playfully punched my chest. "You still talk too smooth." I caught her hand and brought it to my lips. "Only for you." My old friend and fellow undercover knight, Leo, had, in a moment of crisis, chosen to see the light and help the Covenant defend against the invasion. As a reward, Serafina had made him head chef of the fortress kitchens. His mission had officially changed from sabotage to inventing new and exciting dishes for us to try. Sometimes, when she was bored, Serafina would still make me read the precepts of Argent Light to her. But now, she would curl up in my arms and listen, her head on my chest, until the steady rhythm of my heartbeat lulled her into a peaceful sleep. Light and shadow, salvation and damnation. None of it seemed to matter anymore. All that mattered was that I had found my true path, and her name was Serafina.